obligatory. I saw Train to Busan a while ago, and I really, really liked it. I feel like I know a bunch of people that are really into zombie movies, and they're going to be pretty forgiving about zombie movies in general just because they like the genre. I personally am indifferent to the genre. To me, it's a little bit the same as like the superhero genre. I see a lot of it. So when a zombie movie really grabs my attention, it's usually for, a bunch of other reasons other than the zombies. Like, the story's just really, really good, or it's intense. And I definitely felt like Train to Busan delivered on that. It had something to say other than zombies. So I didn't really expect this sequel to be as good as the first one, because that just kind of seemed like a bit of an anomaly. And I just gotta say straight up, I didn't really like it. Like, I was entertained for the whole time, but there's definite problems that I had with this movie. And I saw this movie with somebody that is one of those really hardcore zombie people. Like, she loves zombie movies and she can be pretty forgiving. And at the end of Peninsula, even she was a little bit like, well, let me break it down. First of all, and the biggest problem I feel like with Peninsula is that it's not really sure what it wants to be. So the story goes that we're following this lead character that is, he's in the military, and he was there kind of at the genesis of this whole cataclysmic zombie event. So he's done a couple things in his past that, that he regrets, leaving people behind, and maybe there's a couple instances where he could have done something more. That's his story. So we're following him years later after that initial zombie event happened. The whole world knows that this event happened, and this peninsula has been quarantined off from the rest of Korea. So people that were from this peninsula and that managed to escape are now being denied as refugees because people are afraid of this zombie virus. And the story basically kicks off that this group of people in which he's involved gets hired by this group that tells them, if you go in here and you get all this money and wealth that was basically left behind on this peninsula, then you can earn your access into the city. We'll make sure that you get into the safe zone. So it basically starts off like a very grounded zombie heist movie. And eventually he gets rescued by this small group, this family, these two little girls in particular, that have somehow managed to stay alive on this peninsula, and they've kind of adapted to their surroundings. That's a cool idea. But as I said, this movie it goes in a bunch of different directions, and it never really commits to any one. You've got these kind of Mad Max style renegade society that's just thriving off of this apocalyptic world, and they're doing weird zombie bum fights underground. And it's kind of switching back and forth between the member of the main character's group. He gets captured by these people, so it keeps switching back to him and then back to the main character, who's of course with this family. And it's simultaneously trying to build up this gritty renegade group and their world, while also telling the story of this family that's adapted and trying to be a really emotional, a small story. And the two just didn't really fit together. Like, I constantly felt like I was switching between the two and never really settling into either. So that was a big problem. When it all wraps up, you kind of think, this is really a story about the family. I was way more interested in their story and wanted to know more about them. And within that, the main character's story and his backstory and his journey that he needs to overcome, it's completely sidelined until something that occurs near the end that they, throw in a flashback to remind you about. Which leads me to another big problem I had with this movie. There is a lot of really lazy tactics thrown in here. Like, we're talking straight up exposition-y newscasts that intercut with the story just to over-explain what's going on at any given moment, and flashbacks that happen to add weight to a moment that would otherwise seem, a little bit unearned. So to compensate for that, there was a point in the movie at the end, unfortunately, where I was somewhat invested. I'm like, okay, this is the big emotional moment. Sure, I'll see how this plays out. But then it kept going. It almost started to feel like the Dear Sister sketch from SNL. Just emotional climax after emotional climax after emotional climax. And I didn't want to be that asshole in the theater that while this thing was playing out and while these really good performances were happening, started laughing, but I was... So do I think the general public is going to enjoy this movie? If you're a really big fan of Train to Busan and that's the appeal that you have of this movie going into it, you're probably going to be disappointed. I feel like this movie did a lot of the really typical things you see in zombie movies, and they really tried to get every little bit of the zombie genre in there that we're really familiar with. And if you really like those familiar things in zombie movies and you're totally okay with the fact that they're everywhere and pretty much in every zombie movie, then you're probably going to like it well enough. So does it hold a candle to Train to Busan? No. It kept me entertained enough, I guess, but I can't really say that I was a big fan of Peninsula. Also, it just dawned on me that this is the first new movie that I've seen in theaters since Emma in, like, what was that? April? Before that? Wild. So by COVID standards, it was a packed theater. There was like 15 people in that theater, maybe. Anyways, guys, that has been my review for Train to Busan 2 Peninsula. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.